I got a couple of pages here. Some great stories regarding Uncle Donnie. I've heard many times, and I've come to believe, that average people talk about other people. Above average people, they'll discuss current events, and exceptional people, they talk about ideas. Donald Robert Dezinski was an exceptional person. His parents, Anthony John and Romelda Flossie DeHaye, knew that about him. Donald, Donnie, Don, Dad, Grandpa, Uncle Donnie. He was called by a lot of names, many of which we'll refrain from using today. In my experience, he was not shy, and he was one of the best conversationalists I ever had the pleasure of meeting. My experience, however, is very limited. Aunt Linda, his children, grandchildren, siblings, family, and friends can add so much more than what I know and what I remember. But I'm going to try to help get things started, and then eventually everyone that wants to share is going to have a chance to talk about what he may have done to make you smile, one of the things you appreciate the most about him, or one of the things you remember most about Donnie. So here we go. When I was growing up, almost every Sunday, my parents would go to Grandma and Grandpa Dezinski's house. Sometimes Uncle Donnie would be there, but every time he would be part of the conversation. Did you hear about what happened to Donnie? Do you know what Donnie did? Do you know Johnny got a new job? Has Donnie told you about his plans? Guess what Donnie bought? You know, Donnie's taking those bastards to court. That's the sort of stuff you heard on Sundays at Grandma and Grandpa's. And they rarely agreed on all the details of Donnie's stories, but they always ended the same way, with Grandma telling Grandpa, you don't know what you're talking about. Like all their children, they loved Donnie, and they knew there was something exceptional about him. You could tell it when you heard their stories. There was pride in what they were saying. For a while, Uncle Donnie lived on Shakespeare in East Detroit. When visiting him, if you walked through the front door, there was a table, and on the table there was a can stuffed with cash. When I was very young, I remember walking past the can and kind of doing a double take. There were no cans of cash sitting around my house. Uncle Donnie was very astute, and he noticed that I looked at it. And his comment to me without me asking the question was, "That's my mad money. I'm saving up." Well, I thought to myself, he must get angry and spend money. On the drive home, I asked, "What is mad money?" And my father's response was, "When you're a bachelor, you can spend your money on anything you want. You know, something crazy, something fun. You don't have to ask anyone." And that's when I made my mind that that's how Uncle Donnie got that motorcycle, and I want to be a bachelor too. Uncle Donnie had a plan for the house on Shakespeare. It was one of those plans that Grandma and Grandpa would talk about on Sundays. It was an exceptional idea. And some of you were there and remember what it was. He was going to dig a ditch around the house. Then he was going to take jacks and slide them underneath the framework. And he was going to lift the house up off the foundation. And the next step would be to replace the foundation, then lower the house back onto its new footing. Of course, one of the best ways to accomplish this was to enlist the assistance of technical experts and utilize the best safety measures available. By technical experts, Donnie meant any friend or relative that was willing to help. And the day that I was there, I was the safety measure. At about 4 years of age, he told me, "If the house falls on us, just start yelling, 'Help, help, help,' until the neighbors come." There was no 911 back then. Uncle Donnie came over to my house once in a brand new car. I'd never been inside of a new car before, and he offered to drive me and my mother to the Little League baseball game. The new car had air conditioning. We did not even have air conditioning in our house, let alone in a car. And it turns out that for the air conditioning to work, you have to have all the windows rolled up. And it turns out there are no vents in the back seat of this car. So one of the last things I remember on the way to that baseball game was thinking, this doesn't seem to be working really well, just before I lost consciousness. Uncle Donnie cared deeply about his siblings and often showed his loyalty and dedication. On one such occasion, his sister, my mom, had hurt her back and was having a difficult time moving around. My father was working afternoon shift, so my mom called Uncle Donnie, and he came over to the house. And he helped put me and my brother and my sisters to bed, and then he waited with my mom until my dad got back. And then he stayed with me and my siblings while my dad took my mom to get the back taken care of. That's the kind of person he was. Back then, people didn't call ahead. They just came over. And that's why your bed always had to be made, and that's why the house always had to be clean, because you never knew when guests were going to show up. So it was no big deal to hear a knock on the door and find Uncle Donnie standing on the porch. But it was a real big deal when there was a knock on the door and Uncle Donnie was standing on the porch with a woman. He brought her over to meet his sister. He introduced his friend Linda. She was super nice. And my mom and Uncle Donnie and Linda laughed all night long, with us kids not really having any clue what was so funny. I think the grown-ups forgot we were there. So when Uncle Donnie grabbed Linda's stockings by the toes and stretched them out and tied them into a knot, the kids started laughing. And then they sent us to bed. That was the end of our night. But after that night, in fairly short order, I was getting a haircut and I was getting new clothes because Linda was becoming Aunt Linda, and we kids needed to look respectable at the wedding. You know, there was going to be a photographer there. It was going to be fancy. After the wedding, Aunt Linda and Uncle Donnie traveled to the Middle East. They brought back some coins and some crucifixes for all the nephews and nieces because he cared about his family. He cared about us as people, and he cared about us spiritually. As a result of his deep sense of family and care for all of us, Uncle Donnie became interested in genealogy. He decided to interview his parents and record the session on cassette for posterity. That was an exceptional idea and a true blessing to be able to listen to it and have it part of our family history. Uncle Donnie enjoyed family gatherings and could be counted on to attend any celebrations. When he showed up, you could also count on there being Kentucky Fried Chicken, some beer, and deep analysis of what was happening politically or economically, and a deeper laugh that was unmistakably his, and yet very familiar or similar to Uncle Sylvester Dezinski's laugh. There was a point when Donnie's father was ill and required 24-hour assistance. At the time, I was old enough to take a turn, and at the end of my shift, Uncle Donnie came over to Grandpa's house to relieve me. That night, we sat at his parents' kitchen table for hours because he said, "I hear you're moving to Kansas." I confirmed what he had heard and shared the reasons why in the same way and explained it to so many other people. And then he asked me something that nobody else had. "Do you think you're going to come back?" I told him I wasn't sure. And that started an hours-long conversation about the ideas of family, purpose, destiny, free will. It all began to unfold at that table with Uncle Donnie. I can honestly tell you, that night he changed the course of my life. I went to Kansas knowing it was temporary, knowing that I would come back, knowing that family comes first, that children need to know their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles, and their cousins. It's one of the things Uncle Donnie did for me. Not that long ago, the twins had a birthday, and of course their grandpa was there. And in short fashion, I was in another conversation with Uncle Donnie. A conversation about ideas. He had just lost 2 sisters, and I'd lost a brother. And he told me he had been looking at property up north, that the drive was what concerned him. He didn't want to drive that far. He thought there must be places where you could have your own piece of nature right in the home county without having to drive, all the way up north. He had grown up hearing about the family farm at 23 Mile and North Avenue, and he was convinced he found a place not too far from there that backed up to a state park. He wanted it to be a place for family gatherings and celebrations, and a place to preserve family history and traditions. He started to tear up as he spoke about the coffee cans of bent nails he had in his garage, how they were his father's, and how Tony Dezinski wasted nothing. Tony kept them because he could always straighten them rather than buy new ones. Donnie kept them because they reminded him of his father. Uncle Donnie shared the concern that someday people are going to go through my stuff, and they're going to have no idea why I kept these bent nails. They might just throw them away. His exceptional idea came to fruition. He bought the house and property on Omo Road, and hopefully everybody knows why he kept those nails. I cherish the time I got to sit next to him at high school football games, the conversations, the excitement of watching 3 generations or 3 descendants from the Dezinski family on the field at the same time, and a sense of being at home anytime he was nearby. At his 70th birthday party, I had a chance to exchanged deer stories with him and some of our outdoor adventures. And I walked away that night thinking, when I'm his age, I want to be like him. I want to be that vibrant, that engaging, and that active. Shortly after that celebration, my mom said to me, just that you're prepared the next time that you get into a conversation with your Uncle Donnie, apparently he's been spending some time on the internet, and you need to be ready to talk about whether or not the world is flat or round. I'm warning you, and don't say I didn't. In typical Donnie fashion, he's gone ahead of all of us, and I'm confident that he's looking forward to seeing us all again. Our hope is that fond memories of Donnie will quickly outpace the sorrow, and that tears will replace the smiles as we think of the times that he spent with us. When I think about all the talks I had with Uncle Donnie, I'm remembering Colossians 4:6. Let your conversations be gracious and attractive, so that you'll have the right response for everyone. Pat Sebastian's been a